The following is a fan-based discussion. All properties discussed are property of Toei Inc., Bandai, Hasbro, and Subaraya Productions.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Tokutalk of the Tokucast and the Toku Time. Today, we're going to be talking about fights, how they changed, and some of the locations that they no longer use, which makes me sad, but that's mostly because of ordinances and stuff of that nature. But I do want to talk about fight choreography a little bit. You know, I've been watching a lot of martial arts clips, just as I randomly do. I watch one, and next thing I know, I watch 20. A lot of Jackie Chan and stuff. But it got me thinking about this subject because fights have definitely changed over the years in Toku.
They're also a huge part of Toku.
Yes, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, if the action direction is not good enough to really reflect what we're given.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, sometimes, that comes into CGI effects and stuff, but that's a whole other video we're going to be doing later on today, actually. What I'm mostly mentioning here, because people have been posting things like Cure Major, especially with camera work that comes to that show. A lot of drone work, but looking at some of the older ones, especially in some of the more martial arts focused ones, you can definitely tell a change has happened over the years, and this is definitely a for better or for worse type of thing. What are your particular thoughts just on fights? We've watched a lot of Toku for pretty much every decade.
Yeah.
So
we've gone as far back as, the 70s with something like Zubat, to something as recent as, we just finished 01 month.
Yeah.
And that's, a few years ago. First Kamen Rider, the Reiwa era.
Yeah.
Kira Major, whatnot. Now, when you say my thoughts on fights, do you mean just how the choreography's changed, or just my thoughts on them in general? What are you thinking?
A little bit of both. We'll expand more into how they've incorporated locations into that a little later too.
Well, I'll start by saying that action really is the backbone on which Toku is built.
Yeah.
It is because, you're watching this, this science fiction fantasy adventure where we watch, these larger than life characters in brightly colored costumes punch bad guys and save the day. That's really what it started as, and it's what continues through as a through line throughout the years. And to see how we've come from, because you look at how it started, and it's very much like Adam West's Batman, but with pyrotechnics.
Heavily agree, and I think this
in terms of how it started, because you look at something like Zubat, it is a lot of it's a lot of leaping into frame,
and especially there's a lot of wide punches.
Yeah, a lot of wide haymakers, judo chop, judo block, judo flip, that sort of thing, and then occasionally you'll get a big explosion, because that's kind of what Toku prides itself on, is its explosions and spark packs and whatnot.
Now, what makes me think that things have changed is, weirdly enough, again, one person. Bruce Lee. Really impacted.
I can understand why, because you look at when Enter the Dragon came out, and that's when, to quote the channel Cinefex, that's when we moved away from shootouts and the John Wayne haymaker to actually a ballet of violence. Yeah. To where we could watch something that was a little more complex, something that was just cooler to look at, as opposed to just it was I throw on the right, you block on the left, I throw on the right. Yeah.
Especially because with the advent of, even with Kamen Rider, it was still a lot of haymakers back then. Because when did Enter the Dragon come out? 75? No,
72, I think.
72, yeah. That was 1971, and it's it took a few years for a lot of the more martial art-esque fight scenes to really start happening.
It was 73.
Oh, well, there you go. Still a couple years later, because even V3 did that. I mean, karate is Japanese in nature, but even still, it was still a lot of wide haymakers. There wasn't a lot of controlled fights and things like that. Until later, and that was really once Bruce Lee really just popped onto the screen for a few years that he was unfortunately with us. that's when things really started to change. You can see that reflected in Toku, how the fights start getting a lot cleaner. How it started getting a lot faster. Even when they started using like guns and swords, change sword things just started getting choreographed a lot better. And that could be people who come from the Chinese market who worked on those movies started to come over here. You can definitely see that with somebody like the bad guy in Garo season 3, the evil knight who was in the Jet Li movie.
Oh, was he?
He was in Fearless.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was the uncle of the girl. When they fought in that sandstorm, that was him.
I haven't seen Fearless in a while.
Yeah.
Good movie, though.
It is a very good movie. Not Fearless. The one that was based on a Bruce Lee movie from back in the 90s.
Oh, Fist of Legend.
Fist of Legend. Yeah. Fearless is a good movie.
Fearless is a good movie, too.
But yeah, like, you see how the fight started getting a lot more well done.
For want of a better phrase.
Yeah. Because, even still, as much as we like the older stuff...
It's less of like we'll hold the camera in position and then we'll like, our hero and our bad guy or bad guys, if he's fighting a trash mob, they'll like leap into frame. Yeah. And then they'll just kind of start slugging it out. And this one is a little more like, we're in a location. There's a little more setup to the fight. And, we're actually trying to like actually choreograph something. Yeah. As opposed to just like, go nuts.
Swinging.
The kids are going to tumble around in the house while watching this. So just like do that.
Swing for the fences, and that's how you do.
And you brought up something interesting when you mentioned something that I want to touch on when you mentioned Kamen Rider, and that's incorporation of weapons. You look at Sentai, and it's always been a lot more gimmicky.
Yeah, they've always had weapons.
It's been a lot like, specifically you look at something like Garo 5, where it's gymnastics weapons, where you have
the best show ever created on the history of this earth. Yes,
the ribbons and the hula hoop and the bowling pins,
the hula hoop
and the bowling pins
and the ball.
Yes, you have that. You have
I can't wait to watch
Go Ranger with their magic football. You have.
But then
things like that, and then you have Kamen Rider who is like, I'm just gonna punch you, or you have somebody like Kamen Rider Amazon who is much more brutal and animalistic in their fighting style with those big clawed hands.
Yeah. There was a definite shift with, I'm going to say about Super 1, which we haven't seen, but I've seen clips. His whole thing was martial arts. Right. So he actually really started to do like more katas and things in his actual fight scenes. He incorporated that a lot more, and the fight scenes started to become cleaner. You really start to see this in Sentai with maybe Bioman, maybe Changeman, where things start to get a little bit more fluid in the way that the fight scenes go. Not as many jump and do it, because the Changemen fought a lot with their weapons, so they were deflecting a lot more, and they have the little small shield, which was still useful. Wasn't a hoplite shield or anything, but it was definitely still useful in its own way. But the fight scenes started getting a lot cleaner, and this is when I really want to start talking about locations and how they are incorporated into the fights.
Now, one that I think I know you're going to want to bring up is the dam.
The dam, they've used it still pretty recently, but filming has definitely changed how they do the action scenes here. One of my biggest things is something like, we'll take Changeman and compare it to something like Ryu Soldier, which is, Changeman had a lot of, I'm fighting over here in this location, and then we'll zoom in to see these people fighting here in this location. They use their locations a lot differently in their fight scenes. But with something like Ryu Soldier, it's more one take. But it doesn't
starting with Q Ranger, I would say, is when they really started to incorporate drones.
Zooger.
I felt like I saw it more in Q Ranger.
You did.
That's probably when I noticed it first.
Yeah, you see it first in Zooger when they really start doing those drone shots, because they did it in episode 1 or 2 when Zuo Eagle is fighting, and then the camera turns to show him coming and landing and hitting somebody. But yeah, they definitely started using the drones.
But I would say like the best modern example of this would be Kira Major.
Agreed.
I think that'd be a better comparison, because because we have our groups fighting in one space, it does a good job of keeping the camera in wide shots, because that way you get a good look at all the action. It cuts to closer shots when you need to, because you want to see the impact, you want to see a certain scuffle between us. If it's like the main monster of the week in a particular hero. And they clash, and then in the background you have the other heroes fighting the mob. And you're switching back and forth between wides, and they have those great one takes.
Oh,
that
like
they have
the building
the
trying
one
to get the tablet?
The one through the warehouse with the game of Keep Away. There's also the one in the final episode that was really well done.
They did it recently as Enkaider as well, so that's something they kept, and I really appreciated that. We do have the other two outside of this, really just Ultraman and Garo.
Which I think we should talk about as well.
Yeah, we definitely should. Garo has gone, especially because you can see this a lot more in season 1 just going on. Mm-hmm. They do a lot more hand-to-hand.
It's a lot more hand-to-hand, and it's a lot more out of suit.
Yes, that is the main thing. A lot of the actors or at least they're more willing to train these actors on, certain martial arts aspects to come in and really do these fight scenes. You see it a lot in Garo. Go back and watch season 1, the fight between Koga and Zero in that building before they end up going outside and doing the suits and all of that. It's still so clean, but still dirty in its own way. And I guess that's more of a case of it's the first one.
It's partially that, but it's also Garo has always been just a little more gritty.
Yeah,
Garo has always had that little bit of an edge, a little bit more. Like you're still dealing with kind of like I don't want to say silly and mean it in a derogative way, but these kind of goofy like fantasy concepts of where you have like a hidden society of like dark magic and knights of old still clashing against the forces of evil.
Yeah,
but there is still a level of seriousness and respect and like for want of a better word, verisimilitude that it's still treated with.
That's a good word.
It is.
That is a good $10 word.
It's the best word. Thank you, Robin Meyer Burnett.
But yeah, it's just I'm a much bigger martial arts fan, as I've said many a time before, but seeing something like that in Garo made me freak out the first time I saw it.
It's a lot of hand-to-hand. Eventually the sword gets cut in, and I think in terms of what we've gotten in recent years, Goldstorm, when we have Ryuga and Rion, and we're mixing up magic and hand-to-hand combat, range combat and close combat, and the way they are able to work as a team, and the way that the camera work and the choreography complements the characters in such a great way.
Yeah.
Something that we don't see of enough, and something that I really love about that show.
Yeah, it's one of those things I wish they would really bring back more in Sentai. I'm going to talk about 3 specific examples here when it comes to Sentai. Masked Man, Die Ranger, Geki. I feel like really Die Ranger did the fight scenes the best, not just in suit, but also out of suit. Because they, especially Ryo, who's trained, did a lot of his own stunt work out of suit.
Yeah.
So it was amazing seeing him fight like Jin. Just the two of them going at it and Ryo bursting out of the metal spring suit. That was freaking insane. And the fight scenes in it are just really well done. I guess that's what it does when you have trained actors who are trained in martial arts come in. I talk about Blue Mask at nauseum. He didn't get as many focus episodes in Masked Man, but when he did, it was something like that tournament where it was a whole weapons tournament. He had his, the actors trained in the Chinese straight sword. So we got that. We got to see something like that. Geki, as much as I do love Geki, I feel like it didn't do it as well. This could be because of safety precautions, especially as time went along. More safety measures got input. That's why we stopped getting, from back in the day, like people falling off boats into the ocean, them fighting on cliffs, them rolling down cliffs. We don't get as many shots like that anymore, and I do miss it because those were cool. And that's why I'm really excited for us to go back and watch the older shows again. We'll just push you down a cliff and we'll film it. Enjoy. They do not. As many actors said that might be the worst part about filming back in the day. They're happy that safety precautions have been put in, but it still looks good on camera.
Which they should be put in.
Yeah, it just looks good on
camera. We want our stuntman and actors to be safe.
Like Flashman has one of my favorite fight scenes of any Toku I've seen. We haven't reviewed it yet, but it'll be one of the last ones we do. Where they're like fighting on both the inside. There's like a ledge. They're on the second floor. There's a ledge on the outside. So people are fighting inside the building. People are fighting outside the building. And people are fighting outside of the building on the first floor, like on the ground.
Okay.
And you see people like getting thrown through windows, people getting kicked off the ledge, and all of this is happening. It's like 3 tiers of fights happening at the same time, and it's so cool. I loved it. I've watched that scene a good 3 or 4 times. It's that good. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I sort of wish they would bring back at least a little bit of innovation in how they film the fight scenes. Because, the fight scenes definitely morphed and changed over time, becoming a little bit more special effect heavy inside a suit, and they don't do as many outside a suit. Really, the last one I can really think of that they've done outside a suit might have been in Tokucast, when Green and Red are like going up the steps, because Green is experienced in martial arts.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they showed the 2 of them outside a suit actually fighting. I miss that, and I wish they would bring it back. We did have like a whole video on just like our favorite fights, but they're there for a reason. But this one just more focused on the fight choreography, locations that they fight in, and things of that nature. Especially when they end up doing like multiple places. Like we mentioned, that dam in both Ryu Soldier and Changeman were used. They were used on Lupat too. But the way that the thing was, I miss those wide shots. I miss those huge, expansive wide shots just showing the entire area and people just fighting in different areas inside the thing.
So Ultraman.
Ultraman.
Talk a little bit about Ultraman.
Yeah, we haven't really done that, which is sort of sad. I've seen some clips of the older ones. Struggle.
It's like the older Godzilla films. You get 2 people on a set full of miniatures.
Yeah.
And they just sort of walk up awkwardly and just sort of hit each other and like bump up against each other.
Yeah.
And it's gotten better in recent years, I think.
I think it depends on what monster they're fighting.
It does depend on the monster, because a lot of times with Ultraman, you're fighting those Showa monsters, and those are some bulky freaking suits.
Or even like some of the bigger...
and the actor can't move as much, so you just have Ultraman just kind of awkwardly like shoulder charging him
I hate that.
or whatnot.
I hate it.
Yeah.
It takes me out of the action. When they're fighting something like really big and not as humanoid shaped, or at least, humanoid shaped.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Something that's more human and less of just a big monster.
Yeah, it's just like when the Ultraman just goes for a tackle and just does like the ha, and I don't know. It seems really ineffective. So I don't see a point in why they're doing fight scenes
Ultraman.
like that.
Ultraman is at its best when you can effectively convey the sense of weight.
Yeah,
and you can convey the sense of scale. You look at some of the better Ultraman shows, whether that's Mebius, X, Geed. They do a good job of making Ultraman feel big. Yeah. And the monster is often bigger than he is. And they do a good job of making that feel like a sizable threat, even though Ultraman is himself very big.
Even through the use of CGI or just through the use of miniatures.
Through the use of miniatures, just you have good miniature work, because if you have like cars in the background that are shaking, or he hits the ground and just you have like air guns that like shoot dirt up,
or
give you a sense of like the weight of this character.
Some of my personal favorites when they are in like the model building and they are like in a model office. And the camera's in the office, and they're showing like the fight.
Ultraman Trigger had one really good example of that.
Really?
Yeah. Where it's like going back and forth between 2 miniature apartments. Yeah. And the camera is like in the apartments, looking outside at Ultraman fighting the monster, and they're fighting, and like you see like a bicycle like fall off the wall, and like the TV is shaking. And stuff like that. So like that was one of the things Ultraman Trigger did really well.
It's like
was that one moment.
that.
We'll get to that review
next week. But yeah, I mean, obviously one of my favorite ones, just mentioned that office building. It's like they were fighting over here, and then they got closer and closer, and then they smashed through the building. I love what they have done with drones in pretty much every Toku in the past couple of years, because it has brought so much dynamic.
Either drones or like small enough cameras that we can get. Because it might have been a GoPro they used in the final Kira Major battle. Because at one point we do see the Blue Ranger, the suit actor, like grab the camera.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
He grabs the camera, does like a roll on the ground, and then hands the camera off.
Yeah.
You can like tell that like he's grabbing something and then like passing it on, and it's still because if you've ever seen footage from a GoPro, it's like a fisheye lens.
Yeah.
It's like ultra wide, but it's also like kind of grainy and but it's also like really clear.
Yeah.
Looks different from the rest of the show.
Yeah. And it definitely does a lot more for those fight scenes when they do things like that. I think over the past couple of years, outside of just like a few exceptions, they've done a lot better with fight choreography, at least the filming of that said fight choreography.
Yeah.
Because they'll do like, I don't know exactly what the word is, but it's like they'll rotoscope it, sort of, not rotoscope, but they'll rotate the whole camera and like do a round shot. They've done this a lot in Kira Major, where it's just like we'll go above, so the floor is now the ceiling, and they'll like just roll the camera,
just rotate perspective.
Yeah, and it makes it a lot more dynamic. Can be a little bit sickening if they roll too much.
It depends on your tolerance. Yeah,
but I really enjoy just looking at it.
So let's close out with this. What is something you would like to see them do more of, and what's something you want to see them avoid?
I want to see them avoid one, shaky cam. Don't ever do it.
Yeah, stay away from shaky cam.
Two,
unless your name is Paul Greengrass, stay away from shaky cam.
Two, bring more Ultraman directors into Sentai and Rider if you have something big in the background. Because they did that in that one episode of Kira Major, and I lost my shit.
Kira Major always kept its mech fights interesting.
Yeah.
Not always, but they were at least fun to watch.
Zenkaiger is taking that to a whole nother level.
Yes, so from what I have seen.
And one thing I would love to see them just bring back, because they just don't do it as often. Two things, I should say. Bring back the long shots. If there's a way to do it, like you're running through something, maybe playing a game of keep where you're trying to get to something, do that. Bring back those really wide shots from the Showa era, where people are just fighting in different areas. And then, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, just go to each one. I know ordinances are a thing, but I would love, at least for Rider, if they brought back some of the bike fights, like Kuga, when they were riding on the bike in the beach. And just in general, just bring back Garo.
Have a good old jousting match.
Yeah, just bring back Garo. That's all we need.
Yeah, more Garo, please. Especially if it's at the quality of Goldstormer VR or Vanishing Line.
It would be gold.
3 of the best shows.
Yeah.
Things that I would like to see them improve upon or avoid. I would love it if choreography could be a little more, I don't want to say flourishy, but a little more impactful.
I agree,
because some of the some fights in Toku, for as fun as they can be to look at, they can feel a little toothless. You don't really get this is not like one particular element that is wrong. It's sound, it's choreography, it's acting, it's all these other things put together that makes the fights really
pop.
It as hard as they do and pop. And that is something I would like to see more of. Do
you think that's more of an issue of speed of fight?
Again, it's a holistic thing. It's not. Yeah. It's not just one thing.
Sometimes I think it could be. At least for me, it could be speed.
It can be. It can be
because it seems like the movements are just a little bit too wide, so they don't come back in fast enough. Speed is sort of one thing that I end up paying.
Yeah, speed and space can be a problem, but another thing I really want them to avoid. Or at least, like make sure they're doing correctly, is knowing when to use a wide shot and knowing when to use something close up.
Yeah.
Because wide shots are great. It's great to get a good view of the action. But if you keep it there the whole time, that's how you get the throne room fight in The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
that's how you get the
standing there,
where people are just kind of standing there and like waiting for people to hit their marks, or someone misses their mark and they just kind of stand there and they're like,
or they don't actually get hit, but they flip anyway.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I would much rather they not do that anymore. But this is something that was just like I really wanted to talk about. I'm happy we did because it seemed like we had a lot to say.
We did.
It was good to get all these thoughts out. All right. But yeah, let us know what you think about fights and locations and choreo in Toku. How do you, what is something you want to avoid? What is something you want to see more of in the future? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to join us all the things, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for watching.